Joining us now for World Brief and a review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya, award-winning journalist. Good morning.
Thank you guys. Stop
Adefemi,
it. I'll just faint. That's too much. Good morning. Yes, implications are coming. I'm following Dr. Rubin's lead.
Okay.
But I think implications are going to be a round table, responsibility, because the morning show also won an award, as did Arise News, the network. I think they'll be sending the trophy later on today. So we'll be waiting for your implications too.
Personal award implications.
There is that too. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Good morning to you, viewers. Let me tell you about what's happening around the world. President-elect Donald Trump may well be breathing a sigh of relief as special counsel Jack Smith has asked judges to drop the cases against Trump. The next president of the United States was accused of trying to overturn the 2020 election results and improperly storing classified documents after he left office. Trump had pleaded not guilty in both cases, and in new documents filed on Monday, Mr. Smith, the special counsel, said that the cases should be closed because of a Justice Department policy that bans the prosecution of a sitting president. It may not all be done, though. Mr. Smith has requested that both cases be dismissed without prejudice, which means that the charges could be refiled after Trump finishes his second term. To France now, and it's a very disturbing story here, one that I'm sure that we've all been keeping an eye on. That is the trial of Dominique Pellicot. He's the man who organized for more than 50 men to rape his unconscious wife, Giselle Pellicot. Prosecutors are seeking a 20-year prison sentence. Now, over a period spanning nearly 10 years, Dominique Pellicot used an online website and messaging platforms to find the men, and he has also admitted to habitually drugging his wife with a strong sedative before allowing strangers to sexually abuse her. Lastly, to Africa, and Namibians will vote on Wednesday in what is expected to be the most competitive election yet for the ruling SWAPO party, which has governed the Southern African nation for 34 years. Its current vice president and SWAPO candidate is Netumbo Nandi Naditiwa. And if she does win, she will become the country's first female president. 1.4 million people have registered to vote, and a SWAPO loss would mean the first transition of power to a new party since Namibia gained independence from South Africa back in 1990. High unemployment, corruption allegations, and equality have eroded SWAPO's support over the last two elections. And the frontrunner among the 14 opposition candidates is Panduleni Itula, who's a former dentist, and he won 29% of the votes back in 2019 after splitting from SWAPO, and he now leads a new political party, the Independent Patriots for Change in Namibia. So we're keeping our eyes open on that election now.
All right, so a couple of things. The case of Dominique Pellicot, it's a very sad one. Mm-hmm. When Giselle fell in love with him, she knew he had problems from his childhood. She knew he had a rough childhood. And she said she decided to give a chance with this guy to be able to build a future. And she did that in sincerity with him before he did what he did. See, and please, this goes out to a lot of women. It's best if a man has a rough childhood and is not on psychological counseling or has not sought psychological counseling, it's best you stay off. Because
it's a tough one, isn't
it's
it?
A tough one.
Has a past.
It's a tough one, but it's best you stay off, and I know why I say that, because childhood never really ends.
That's true.
Everything that becomes of a man is morphed in childhood. There are some people today, they've achieved everything, but the childhood inadequacies they faced of not having enough still affects them. And childhood never, and I know what I'm saying. The man might look clean and all of that. The worst cocktail of the man, even now looking clean, is when he now says he knows Christ. He adds religion to it. They are demonic. So please, we should be careful.
Agreed.
I'm not saying Christianity is wrong, but I'm saying a man that has unresolved problems in childhood that now mask it under religiosity, it's a double-edged sword. Christ can heal you, yes, but are you always willing? But you also need the role of a psychologist to clear up the mindset. And it goes back to upbringing. And please, parents too, make the childhood of your children safe. Make it a haven. Try as much as you can not to disrupt it. Don't destroy it for them.
Agree. Thank you, Rufai. So like you said, therapy.
Therapy.
But first and foremost, prison, I hope.
Yeah, but no, he has to do the prison time.
Absolutely.
You know, and probably he'll find therapy in prison. But also, Christ, your religion, your what's it called? Your constant conversation with your faith also helps a great deal, because there are some wounds. It's only your faith that can help you heal.
Agreed.
But you also need therapy.
Agreed.
The second part about Trump, I mean, we knew it was going to happen. Let's stop deceiving ourselves. We knew it was going to happen. It's just a matter of time. They squash all the cases. In fact, it was even one of the incentives while it was running. He kept on muting it out to his supporters and his followers. That's the way the justice system works in America and all of that. But it's sad the way the cookie crumbles, that it is a man that has all the power that evades the justice system.
Yeah, I really did. Thank you, Rufai.
Let me talk about Namibia. So since getting independence in 1990 from South Africa, SWAPO, the SWAPO party, has held the helms of affairs since then. The only female candidate, or the female candidate who is a front runner, is currently the vice president of the country. However, she has a lot of, shall I say, battles on her hand. In 2019, the party lost its 2/3 majority in the House, and so that's said to be an indication of what might happen, especially because when it comes to unemployment figures and the conversation around unemployment corruption by the SWAPO party, young people are hugely affected by this in Namibia, and they might very well, just like in Botswana, as you saw in Botswana, tip it, and for the first time actually see another party emerging in Namibia. And I think that would be quite interesting, especially for politics on the African continent. We've seen a shift in recent times, and this might just very well follow that pattern of seeing a new government emerge, a new set of ideas, fresh ideas, and the people actually expressing their displeasure in the government of the day through the ballot and actually voting out the current administration. We'll find out in a few days. It would have been nice to have, a female president, but it's not about gender. It's also about it's also about performance. Agreed. And the fact that the people are currently discontent with the way they've managed the economy, with allegations of corruption, especially in the fishing industry, which is quite huge in Namibia, and also unemployment numbers. And then going to Dominique, he's actually 20 years is the maximum sentence for rape in France, and that's what the prosecutors are asking for. The other, there's another person who is in this who is also under trial, who was influenced by Dominique to do the same thing to his wife, drug her and also bring in men to rape and to sexually molest her. And I was just having a conversation with you before now that this is the month of the activism against gender-based violence, and just to see this happen. So it'd be great to see the conclusion of this matter. Agreed. And hopefully that would send a signal to men in France to deter them from such horrible actions.
Thank you, Ayo.
Okay, let me start with Namibia. Namibia gained independence from apartheid South Africa in 1990s, and SWAPO has been in charge. But by 1999, in the last general elections, SWAPO lost 2/3 of its majority. It used to have 2/3 majority in parliament. And the reason it lost that majority is because SWAPO came up as a liberation movement, freed the people and all that. But the dynamics has changed. A new generation has emerged in Namibia now. Those persons that they call born frees, that's the word, born frees. They were not part of the liberation movement. They will not behave like their grandfathers and grandmothers who will say, oh, this is SWAPO that liberated us. Yes. So they are a key factor in this particular election. That's point number one. Point number two is that we have had, recent elections in South Africa, in the southern region. Now, South Africa, ANC lost its parliamentary majority. In Mozambique, Botswana, in Mozambique, Frelimo won, retained his dominance, but there's riot on the streets. In Botswana, the ruling party lost its ticket after 58 years. The question now is, what is going to happen in Namibia? From the pre-election things that have been done, offshore elections, SWAPO is still leading. The expectation is that SWAPO is going to win. And if it wins, what makes it historic is that Nandia Nkwatia, who is the female candidate, current vice president, will emerge as the first female president of Namibia after the fashion of Johnson Sirleaf in 2005, Joyce Banda of Malawi, and Shanda of Central African Republic. So Africa, we will have another woman president.
So
however,
yes.
the challenge in Namibia will be to deal with unemployment, which is a rate of 20%. 1.4 million voters have registered to vote, half of the population,
yes,
essentially. But the voting is tomorrow. It remains to be seen.
Agreed.
The other issue about Giselle Pelicot is about women empowerment. The big thing about the story is not even the maximum sentence that the prosecutors are asking for. The big thing is that this woman said the trial should be in public.
Yes.
And that it could have been done privately if she wanted. But she said she wanted to empower other women to speak up against sexual abuses.
Agreed.
And this kind of animal behavior that her husband put up for 10 years.
Yes.
And there's another case, Marichal. There's a girl called Marichal who copied Dominic Pelicot
in those
and
actions.
also arranged the same kind of sexual abuse for his wife. Women suffer a lot in France. And that's why there are rallies, protests, saying that, look, the rape law in France, a second look should be taken at
Agreed.
it to emphasize the issue of consent.
Yes. Thank you very much. Very, very much for all of your comments. We're going to take papers and then come back to you to finish your thoughts and give your points on the papers. Let's take a look at the front page of This Day this morning, and it leads with the economy. President Tinubu is excited, as we've seen, as we've talked about this boost in the GDP, which is reflected on the front pages of many Nigerian papers this morning. This Day reports that the non-oil sector contributed 94% of the upturn of Nigeria's 3.46 growth rate. The New Telegraph, Vanguard, The Guardian, they all lead with President Tinubu's excitement on the economy. The New Telegraph also looks at news that Vice President Kashim Shettima is throwing his weight behind technology-based solutions to tackle insecurity. Which brings me to the Daily Trust, where insecurity leads the front page as villagers in Benue run for their lives as gunmen kill scores of people. And staying with insecurity, The Punch says the federal government is planning to deploy more troops as this latest organization of Lakurawa spreads to the north-central regions, including Benue, which is what we've just discussed. And the Tribune, it features a story on the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, which has raised concerns over 1 million crimes related to violence against women and girls, which were recorded in 2002 and in 2023, accounting for 20% of all police recorded crimes. In response, the UNODC country representative here in Nigeria has launched its 16 Days of Activism campaign. The papers on the African continent now, and South Africa's Citizen also looks at gender-based violence reported to be a national priority as other violent crimes slightly decreases. And to the United Kingdom, both the Times and the Daily Telegraph report on the number of single women undergoing IVF has tripled in the last 10 years. Clearly, many more women in the United Kingdom are deciding that parenthood is not dependent on matrimony. Dr. Abati, I'll come to you to finish your thoughts, and then Ayo, and of course, you Rufai.
No, sorry. Well, just to comment on the Trump story, which I was going to go to. Well, this is to be expected. The one line that we should add to it is that it shows Donald Trump's extraordinary ability to just stare down the opposition. If this had happened to another American politician, that person would not even have won the election. In summer, the Supreme Court decided that official acts performed by the president, is entitled to immunity. It's controversial, but that's the reality.
Right.
And now Smith has now come back to say the two federal charges. What are those federal charges? About the assault on the Capitol, and the second one about keeping classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Now, those charges have now been withdrawn. Now, the total is about 100 charges. All those 100 charges, including the one that Justice Macan was supposed to, issue sentencing today, November 26, in the matter involving Stormy Daniels. It's not going to happen. All these cases have been dropped. The only one that is on pause is the one in Georgia.
Yeah.
So it looks like Trump has outmastered everybody. But the residual point is the point about the fortune of the prosecutor himself. Donald Trump has said that after assuming office on January 20, he will deal with Smith, the prosecutor. That remains to be seen.
All righty. I'll love to hear your thoughts on some of the newspaper stories.
Okay, so Tribune. I'll go to the Tribune headlines and, of course, also the ones of Southern Africa, which centers on yesterday being the International Day for the Elimination of the Violence Against Women, and the UN ODC coming out with figures that over 1 million women face gender-based violence in Nigeria. I dare say that that number is quite conservative because we have a data challenge, especially with regards to the numbers that are reported, and even on the reporting of the incidents, because there's still the stigma around it. There's still the protection, the shame attached to it, and a number of people not coming out to say anything. I must say that some states, like Lagos State, have done considerable work in ensuring that more women are protected, more women have the opportunity to report, and the case is taken as far as possible. I say this in light of what's happening in France. Before we came on air, we were saying that if this is happening in a country like France, strong laws, it's said to be a developed country, then imagine what's happening in developing countries like Nigeria and other countries on the African continent. The UN says that every 10 minutes, a family member, perpetuates violence against women around the world. It's not just an African problem, it's around the world, and it's great to know that there's a lot of work around that.
Thank you, Ayo.
I mean, pretty much for me, as regards the newspaper review, it's still the GDP numbers. And like I was saying before, you see, the National Bureau of Statistics recently started a mission to recalibrate the fundamentals of calculating unemployment, which is paltry, which is in bad light. And I think it was Yemi Kale that was here that says the parameters were wrong. In fact, they had pushed him then to change those parameters. And that's why you're getting lower GDP numbers. The last time we're on the last parameter, the unemployment number was well over 33%. Now you're seeing 4.6%. So they've just reduced the number of working hours to be able to prorate for unemployment. And what it does is it creates a disastrous false effect where you think everything is good, but it's not good. And when you extrapolate that 4.6%, it might be well close to the 40% percentile for unemployment numbers. So we should be careful. Also, I see an attempt by the National Bureau of Statistics to also say there needs to be a recalibration in the calculation numbers for GDP and all of that. What it does is it never tells you the true picture of what is happening in the economy. And that's why you see there's a big disconnect. But even at that, the 3.4 number is quite paltry. And I'll tell you why. Most of that came from the services sectors like banking. It's not sustainable. That's not real growth in the real economy. Yeah, crop production at over 20.6%. But at an economy that the population is growing close to 2 to 3% percentile, and you have 3.46%, GDP growth, when you check all the GDP parameters, must be way more than the population growth for you to be able to make something good out of it. And when you also look at the nominal GDP growth number in Naira terms, prorate it in dollar terms, it doesn't go far. Like I did the calculation. The nominal GDP was 71 trillion. When you look at the 71 trillion, between when this administration came in, the debt was 87 trillion minus what it is now to 134 trillion. You get 47 trillion. Subtract that by the nominal GDP. You see that's a far cry. The GDP is just inching over 200 trillion. We've taken close to 150 trillion now in debt. If you add ways and means to it with the other 30 trillion percentile, the other 30 trillion amount. So when you look at that number, then there's a big problem for us. And that's why we keep borrowing. And that's why the lawmakers are saying,
the vicious cycle.
Why are you borrowing when you're making your revenues? But they keep borrowing. And they're not doing anything with the money.
Thank you for your thoughts, always.
Right. Thank you so much, Adefemi. We'll see you again tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
For World Brief and, of course, newspaper headline review.